going to be a chaotic video. I feel like I've got a lot of little projects to do, a lot of stuff to talk about. This is a little piece that I ordered. I've been looking for over a year now, and one just happened to come up. A place that I look for parts sometimes. I've never ordered from this place before. It's called Amazon. No, just kidding. It's called isicar.com. I think that it's a Japanese company. It is. This came from Japan, as you can probably already tell by this box. It's got to be the right color. It's got to be right-hand drive. I wanted this because someone in my Pajero, where I owned it, had mounted a navigation screen with like the equivalent of like sheetrock screws to the front here, drill holes in it. There's always something that bothered me. This thing looks great. It's obviously the first time I've seen it. Didn't know it came with a shift boot, which is cool. So it's just a simple piece of plastic. Shift boot is built in, has like a frame here and some like little plastic rivets to hold it on. So the reason I'm doing this is because the Pajero automatic, which I have, has like a sport mode with a plus and a minus. And it's really cool. It holds the gear for you. You can bounce it off the rev limiter and everything as if it were manual. The weird thing about it is that unlike sequential transmission in a car, it's backwards. So instead of shifting up, pulling it back as you would in like a racing car, because of course we all have sequential transmissions in our racing cars, you push it forward. So it's like counterintuitive. All you have to do to fix that is take off the shifter stock and reverse 2 wires, and you can reverse the stickers if you want to be cool, and then you're done. So we're going to do that at the same time. Because this has to come out, I am going to take this off as well. I had already done a little bit of work in here. The automatic shifter has a screw in the front you have to take off right here, and then a little piece of trim comes off and you can take this whole thing off. I'm not quite there yet. The 4-wheel drive selector just unscrews. It's hard to unscrew because there's a lock nut. So if you can get down there and crack the lock nut and then unscrew the knob, it comes off easier. Down here it gets a little tricky. Way down inside, you can't even see. But you have to put a long screwdriver through these holes, and like I had to buy this Joker screwdriver from Batman here to get down in there. It goes all the way down. So 2 screws in there, a bunch of screws that you can see very obviously have to come out. I have 2 screws to go. I've taken the rivets out in front here. So I'm about to take this out. You can see the holes that someone drilled into this one. It's the only real interior defect. So I took those 2 screws out. They were requiring the long screwdriver, and those were here and here. And then I removed the rear part of the center console, which I'm not replacing. This is the first time I've ever had it off on this particular truck, and as you can see, there's some plugs here. I'm not sure what those are for yet. I'll have to look into that. Here's a tricky bit, and I actually looked a lot online to figure this out, and nothing on the forums about this. So that one screw I was talking about for the shifter, you take that off and then you gently pry right here, and then that reveals another screw. You can see this is like kind of loose, but it's not all the way off, and you don't want to force it. So there's another screw, and it'll come off. So that's how you remove a Mark II Pajero auto shift knob. Just to show you what that looks like, this is the trim. It rested on there, one hole. Take that off with a short Phillips, pry that off, and then there's another one, which is actually this screw right here. That's to get the whole knob off. I'm not even sure you need to actually take it all the way off, but I don't want to force this trim panel off, so I'm going to take it off. So this is what it looks like with the rear. And the front out. You can see I have some cleaning to do in here. It's a little bit gross. You'll be tempted because this connector here has a harness connected to it that runs underneath that whole front half of the center console. It's easiest just to unplug it and take the console out with the wires on it and all the cables on it. I'd recommend doing that. The other thing I'd recommend doing is putting the car into some kind of gear, get it out of park so this shifter angles back. It's easier to pull the center console back and off than by having the stick in front. You can't really pull it up and off. So those are my two tips. So this was the nerve-wracking part here. This is like the top of the shifter console. As you can see, it's still flipped. Pushing the shifter forward is positive, like upshift. I want it backwards, right? So I was able to gently remove this decal, and I did that by pulling back on this little tab here gently and popping it out. And now I'm going to try to flip it, but I'm not totally sure if that's going to work. So it turns out these aren't stickers. This is just one piece, and I've been trying to peel the stickers back for a while, but it wasn't working. So after some deliberation and some nail biting, I decided to just gently and very slowly trim this piece back, because what I'm going to do is flip it 180 degrees so it's mirrored, but it's not symmetrical. So this is like a major gamble because I don't think I can buy this part again. What I'm trying to do is get this thing to fit like that, and I'm close, but you can see that contour exists because this exists here, this bump. So I'm a little worried about this. Might take some trial fitting. That's what we want right there. And it's pretty much snapped in right now. I need to take just a tiny bit more off. I'm not even going to use the scissors. I'm just going to use a file. And I'm going to get so just these two snug over just one little bit more. That's it. I've done it. Now I just need to clean the dirt off the surround, but it came out good. It's snapped in. It's almost like they wanted you to do this. They just want to mess with you. The next part will be wiring the car to make this actually work. The next step here for swapping over from the old center console to the new is taking off all these clips, hold the wires, take out the cigarette lighter, and actually both cigarette lighters. We've got a lot of cigarette lighting happening. The boot can stay because we have a new one. Put it on some cardboard so I don't scratch anything. We'll swap this harness over, and then we will get to swapping that plus minus shifter over. That'll be the final stage, and we'll put it back together. To get the back side of the lighter socket off, you unscrew this piece here. It's like a light bulb almost, and you can pull it out the front. This back one's a little different. Just the top piece screws off. I had to break it loose with pliers, grasping it very gently. That comes off, then this, and so forth. It's a little different than the front. That goes out the back. Then there's a locating pin here to locate this bracket. On the top side, this plate pops out. I just used a screwdriver from underneath here, popped it out. Because this was a car that got smoked in, I'm gonna sand this down and repaint this trim before I put it back in. So we'll have a little bit of a pause here so I can clean that up. It's always bothered me actually looking down on it, so this will be a good opportunity. So while I'm waiting for that ring to dry, I'm going to take out some connectors here. These guys have to get unplugged. and then I have to take off a little electronics box behind this metal plate so I can actually swap the wiring over. So I've got the two connectors off. It's so dark in here, I'm sorry. The next step is to take this pin out, take this lever, just slide it off, and then get this black box off. That's what has all the electronics for the shifter control in it, and I have to take that off to see what wires I need to flip to make this all work. This is our electronics box right here for the shifter. I took it off the console. This right here, this slot gets knocked up and down, forward, backward, by that like sequential mode. So I need to take this cover off and see what wires are going to that, because I don't have a pin out here for this. I also imagine this thing is not available anymore, and it's probably Evo only, because I don't know about any other cars that had this function. So I'm going to be very careful when I take this apart and cross my fingers. So what I've done is I've pried under each corner. There are clips here, here, and then that will allow me to gently lift this piece off. I have no idea what's under here, so this is kind of nerve-wracking. Springs probably. Who knows what's about to happen here. Alright, PCB. I have to admit this is way more involved than I thought it would be. So now I've pulled the PCBs out of this, basically it's a switch housing, this thing. And you'll notice these little switches here, momentary, bah, 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 up and down. Now look at the traces. This is a really simple PCB. I look at the traces, one is power, the other two are signals. It's the yellow and the white cables. So I've cut those two, and there's a few ways of doing this now, right? If I was totally certain, I could just use a butt connector and reverse them. But because I'm not totally sure, and documentation for this kind of thing doesn't really exist, I'm going to use a Deutsch type connector, which is easily depinnable. And that way I can switch it back if this is wrong. You might ask, why didn't I just depin this connector? I tried, I can't figure out how to get these pins out. I unlocked a latch, and I have some depinning tools, and I just simply couldn't get the pins out. So ideally, if you're really good at this, you just depin these two here, swap them, and it's totally clean. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that, so this is what I did. So we've got our pin locks in there. Insulators are on the back. Do a little test fit. Good. As you can see, the yellow and white are reversed now. I'll clean this up, try to get this thing back together, and we'll test it. Mercifully, I've got it all back together. Just one slides in there, one goes in there, and you want to make sure that the tops of your switches are seated properly. So I've got the connectors back in. We're in rear wheel drive mode. I had to put the knob back on to figure out how to get there. So that's this knob. We're in first gear now. I've shifted over to the sequential gate, and I'll pull back. Second gear. Forward, first gear. Exactly what I wanted. We're gonna vacuum up this carpet and clean everything behind here and put all this crap away. Put the center console on, and we're gonna be good. So this is all back in the new console. This is a light bulb for the ashtray. This is a light for the ring of the cigarette lighter. Power to the lighter, ground. Those are all plugged in. We've got all our little clips in. We're looking good. Now this thing's about ready to go in. If you're watching closely, I made a mistake earlier and I forgot to put this little panel on. So I've got that all cleaned up. My signals are switched because I flipped the plate underneath as you saw earlier. This thing's screwed down. I did a little dry run to make sure the shifter operates smoothly. And I also did a little dab of white lithium grease on all the lengths while I'm in there. When you put the console on, when you like nose it in and down, you want to turn the car on, press the brake, pull this back. You don't have to have the car running, just have it on so you can move the stick. Put it in D just to angle the sticks both back and crank the handbrake up. That helps you nose everything in properly. But we're on, it's looking fresh. I have to do the rear now and get those 2 long screws in. The side clips up on the front. We're almost there. Home stretch. Let's admire our finished work. No more screw holes. Everything's clean. Very happy here. This looks great. Now these are switched. As we've mentioned, the knobs are back on. Everything's tight. Trim rings painted. Looking good.